My boyfriend told me to shut up, and he's never regretted anything more. I was trying to save him from a mistake that would destroy his life, but he chose to scream in my face instead. So, I took his advice and let him burn. I stood in the kitchen of the apartment we'd shared for 3 years, watching the man I loved pack a suitcase with movements that were frantic and aggressive. Mark wasn't going on a trip, he was chasing a dream, or at least that's what the guy on the other end of the phone had told him. "Mark, please," I said, my voice steady but pleading. "I looked into that company. The registration is fake. The address is a P.O. box in a country you can't even pronounce. If you wire that money, it's gone." Mark stopped. He didn't look at me. He just gripped the handle of the suitcase until his knuckles turned white. "You've always done this, Chloe," he whispered. His voice was like dry leaves scraping against pavement. "Done what?" "Tried to protect our savings." "You've always tried to keep me small," he snapped, spinning around. His eyes were bloodshot. Ambition had turned into a kind of fever. "You're just jealous that I'm finally going to be the one bringing in the real money. You want me stuck in that cubicle so you can feel superior." "That's not true." I stepped forward, reaching for his arm. "I'm a financial analyst, Mark. I literally do this for a living. The numbers don't add up. There's no such thing as a 400% return in a week. It's a pump and dump scheme." Mark's face turned a shade of purple I'd never seen before. He took a step into my personal space. "Shut up!" he growled. The air in the kitchen seemed to vanish. "Mark, I said shut up!" he screamed. The sound echoed off the tile walls. It was so loud it felt like a physical blow. "I am sick of your voice. I am sick of your analysis. From now on, don't say a single word to me about my business. Not one word. Just keep your mouth shut and stay out of my way." I froze. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my mind suddenly went quiet. It was a strange, crystalline kind of silence. I realized in that moment that the man I had supported through 3 job losses, the man whose student loans I had helped pay off, was gone. In his place was a stranger who valued a stranger's lie more than my truth. So I took a deep breath, and I did exactly what he asked. I shut up. I didn't say a word when he went to the bank the next morning. I didn't say a word when he signed the wire transfer documents for $85,000. That was every cent of our joint savings, plus the emergency fund I'd spent 5 years building. I watched him do it from the passenger seat of the car, and I stayed silent. I thought that was the hardest part. I thought watching our future vanish into a digital abyss was the peak of the pain, but I was wrong, because what happened next proved that Mark's betrayal went far deeper than just money. 3 days later, the office Mark was supposed to move into was delayed. The phone calls from his business partner started going straight to voicemail. Mark was pacing the living room like a caged animal. He was sweating. His confidence was starting to crack, revealing the panic underneath. "They're just busy," he muttered to himself, casting a glance at me. "It's a big transition, right, Chloe?" I didn't answer. I was sitting on the sofa reading a book. "Chloe, I asked you a question." I looked up. I gave him a small, polite smile, and I turned the page. "Are you seriously doing this?" he yelled. "The silent treatment now, when everything is on the line?" I just kept reading. I had already moved my clothes out while he was at the bank. I had already signed a lease on a studio apartment across town, but he hadn't noticed. He was too busy refreshing his bank balance, which sat at exactly $14.22. Suddenly, a notification popped up on his laptop, which was sitting on the coffee table. He wasn't in the room. He'd gone to the kitchen to grab a beer. I looked at the screen. It was an email, not from the investment firm, but from a woman named Vanessa. "Hey babe, did the wire clear? My husband is getting suspicious about the business trip funds. If we don't book the Ville in Cabo today, we'll lose it. Can't wait to finally leave this place behind with you." I felt a coldness wash over me that I can't describe. It wasn't just a scam. Mark wasn't just a victim of a fraudulent company. He was trying to steal our life savings to run away with another woman. The investment wasn't an investment, it was his exit strategy. But there was one thing Mark didn't know. The guy who recruited him, the one running the pump and dump, he wasn't a stranger. He was a contact I'd flagged in a fraud investigation 6 months ago at my firm. I knew exactly who he was, and I knew exactly where that money was currently sitting. I could have told Mark. I could have told him that the partner he was working with had already spent half the money on a yacht in Miami. I could have told him that Vanessa was actually working with the scammer to lure men like Mark into exits. But Mark had given me very specific instructions. Shut up. So, I did. I watched him break down over the next 48 hours. I watched him cry when the email address for the firm was deactivated. I watched him scream at the walls when he realized the phone number was disconnected. And finally, I watched him crawl. He came to me on Friday night. He looked like a ghost. He knelt on the floor in front of me, burying his face in my lap. "Chloe, I'm so sorry," he sobbed. "You were right. Everything you said, you were right. I lost it all. I lost everything. Please, please tell me what to do. You always know what to do." I looked down at the top of his head. I felt absolutely nothing. The love I'd felt for him hadn't just died. It had been incinerated. I reached into my purse. I pulled out a small, printed document. I placed it on his back. He pulled away, looking at the paper. It was a screenshot of the email from Vanessa. The color didn't just leave his face. It was like his entire soul evaporated. "Chloe, I can explain." I stood up. I grabbed my final bag, which I'd hidden in the hall closet. I walked to the front door. "You told me to shut up, Mark," I said. My voice was quiet. It was the first time I'd spoken in 4 days. And honestly, it was the best advice you ever gave me. "Where are you going?" he screamed, stumbling to his feet. "You can't leave me. I have no money. I have no job. The rent is due on the 1st. I opened the door. I know, I said. Wait, did you call the police? Did you track the money? You're an analyst. You can find it. I stepped out into the hallway. I already found it, I said. You did. Where is it? Give it back to me. I looked him in the eye one last time. The money was flagged as fraudulent by my firm's security team, I said. Since the account was in both our names and I provided evidence of the scam, the funds were recovered and moved into a protected single-owner account. Hope flared in his eyes. A disgusting, greedy kind of hope. Oh, thank God. Okay, let's go to the bank. We can start over. No, I said. The hope died. What do you mean, no? The account is mine, Mark. Since you told me to stay out of your business, I decided to make it my business. I used the funds to pay back the portion I contributed over the last 3 years, plus interest for the emotional distress of being told to shut up. You can't do that. That's my money. Actually, I can, I smiled. I have the recording of you screaming at me to never speak to you about the money again. My lawyer thinks it's a very strong case for a gift of assets. I closed the door. I could hear him screaming from the other side. I could hear him pounding on the wood, but for the first time in years, it was quiet. I walked down the stairs and out into the cool night air. I thought that was the end. But there was one final revelation. 6 months later, I was sitting in a cafe in a new city. I saw a news report on the television. A major international fraud ring had been busted. Among the faces of the people being led away in handcuffs was Vanessa, and right next to her was the man who had played the scammer. But what shocked me was the third person. It was Mark. He hadn't been a victim. He'd tried to join them. After I left, he had reached out to the scammer, offering to help them find new targets in exchange for a cut of the $85,000 he thought they still had. He was so desperate to be big that he became the very thing that destroyed him. I took a sip of my coffee. I looked out at the street, and I didn't say a word. Powerful final ending line, he screamed for me to be silent, never realizing that my voice was the only thing keeping him from the edge. Sometimes, silence isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of a plan. Have you ever been told to stay quiet only for your silence to become your greatest weapon? Let me know in the comments. And if you're ready to find your own voice, make sure to subscribe for more stories of justice.